beer.
Yeah. Yeah, I like beer. It helps relax me. I'm nervous in front of cameras.
No, don't be.
Forget about it.
You're talking to me.
I know, you've really put me at ease.
Camera.
Tell me your name one more time.
My name is Marie.
Marie. I should be able to remember that.
It's an easy one.
That's right. I just
Okay,
remember.
can you pronounce it the French way?
Marie. I'm sorry.
Do you want to put it into...
Oh yeah, I could put that. Could you strap it on it? Yeah, it's perfect. Great. Perfecto. Thank you, Marie.
Dave, are you all set?
I'm all set.
Ready to go?
Ready to answer questions. Ready for the interrogation.
Yes, I love this play. So Dave,
Yes.
when was the first time you heard Jackie's music?
I think I was 15, I believe. 15 or 16. The Heavy Weather recording with Teen Town and Birdland. It was just, I just started playing electric bass. I started out on acoustic and electric about the same time, 15 or 16 years old, high school. And I came up through the band program, my high school band program, so I started playing brass instruments. I played trumpet and euphonium and tuba, and then switched to electric bass because I could read music, and I realized that I could start working professionally as a bass player because of the fact that I learned to read music. And I'm from Dayton, Ohio, which is the Midwest, and there was kind of a dearth of bass players in the area that I grew up in. So I started playing in rehearsal bands and started playing, weddings and pit orchestras and different things professionally. By the time I was 16, 17 years old, I was playing gigs, and so I had aspirations in a career in music. And the first time I heard Jaco, it had a tremendous impact on me. Jaco revolutionized. Not only did he revolutionize the bass, but he revolutionized music too in a lot of ways. He was the first person to really exploit the melodic power of the electric bass, really more so than anyone else. I mean, Jack Bruce and Larry Graham and Stanley Clarke and some other people had started exploring that area, but Jaco defined it more clearly than anybody at that time. There was nobody at that period of time that was playing melody on the bass with the kind of harmonic command that Jaco had developed by that time. And he was, I think he was probably still in his 20s, but he was leaps and bounds ahead of everybody else at that point. So I like to refer to music from the 70s, the whole fusion era, as there's music before Jaco and music after Jaco, because he influenced a lot more than just bass players. He influenced composers and all musicians. The way he influenced the way we think about music and the way we think about the bass's function in music, in contemporary music.
So isn't it challenging to choose to play the bass after?
It's challenging, but yes. I mean, Jaco set a standard that has yet to be surpassed. But Jaco was influenced by a lot of acoustic bass players. I mean, he listened to people like Charles Mingus and Scott LaFaro, and I'm sure listened to Ron Carter and Ray Brown. And Jaco was just such a total student of music and of the bass. Jaco knew everything about the history of jazz. He was a fan of jazz. He followed, Miles Davis and Joe Zawinul, Wayne Shorter, and Herbie Hancock, and he wanted to associate himself with those people because he was influenced by those people, and Jaco's influence goes back a long way. But Jaco was unique because it wasn't only jazz. Jaco was probably the first eclectic bass player because he was influenced by not only jazz but by R&B music and pop music and rock and country and western and almost very, very influenced by classical music. So he had an eclectic background in his musical upbringing. I think that was important in his development and in his impact that later was responsible for his impact.
Can you talk to us about the technicality of his music?
Yeah, well, Jaco, I guess he had these thumbs. He had a deformed thumb or something. So he could do things on the instrument that very few people were able to do because of just the physiology of his hands. And you may have seen pictures of him where he could dislocate both of his thumbs, so he could do things technically on the bass that nobody had ever seen before. Nobody would even ever attempt, because Jaco had this certain type of physical structure to his hands that enabled him to produce the tones and the sounds and the magical things that he produced on the bass. The physical part of it was very important, I think.
Have you ever met him?
I got to meet him a few times, yeah.
How was it?
Very interesting. I mean, I was a huge fan of his. He was an idol of mine, and he's one of the major reasons why I play music today. Listening to Jaco as a kid, hearing that first solo record, actually hearing the Weather Report record first, and then getting access to the other records that he had done prior to that. I think the Pat Metheny Bright Size Life was a very important one, but that had come before. That didn't get as much media coverage, but once the Weather Report records started coming out and the solo records started getting recognition, people started going back and listening to the things that he had done, and even as far back as some of the Wayne Cochran recordings and the R&B bands that he played with in Florida.
What kind of a man was he?
Well, I didn't know him that well. I mean, I just knew him peripherally. I got to meet him, and that's how through Jaco was how I became exposed to Peter Erskine and his career. And so the connection between Jaco and Peter Erskine is very important, as anybody knows who follows music history from the 70s. Because Jaco was instrumental in getting Peter on the Weather Report band, and so I was familiar with Peter from his tenure with Stan Kenton and Maynard Ferguson, but when Peter and Jaco joined Weather Report, actually Jaco got Peter on the band, I think is the way the story goes. That was a very important event in musical history, and that chemistry between those two guys is just legendary, And if you listen to the records, it's obvious, I think, to anyone. They set a standard that has yet to be surpassed in terms of innovation and just pure originality and tradition, and all those things combined. It's very rare to hear musicians that play together on that level.
Is there one of Jaco's composition that you really worked hard on?
Yeah, Three Views of a Secret was something that I learned to play on the bass. It was one of the first things. But going back to his first solo records, I mean, the Donna Lee track is something that I think that's almost become a staple of every bass player's vocabulary. I teach at all the universities in Southern California, and all my students come in, and that's the first thing they want to play for me. They want to show me that they can play Donna Lee. And that's an old Charlie Parker song that goes way back to the 40s. And it's based on an old standard called Back Home in Indiana. And it's funny that they know Jaco's recording of it, and some of them can even play Jaco's solo verbatim. I've worked on that a lot. I've forgotten it now. I can't execute it anymore. But I was very influenced by that. But they all know Donna Lee, but they don't know where the song came from, and I think that's an interesting gap, in the generations. And Jaco reintroduced that music to a whole new generation of music listeners, myself included.
Okay, if you were only allowed one word to describe him, which one would it be?
One word. Innovator. Probably the most important innovator on the bass for the second half of the 20th century. Like I say, Charles Mingus and Paul Chambers, Scott LaFaro, Ray Brown, and even going back as far as Jimmy Blanton with Duke Ellington's band. Those guys were all very important, and they were a big influence on Jaco. But Jaco, because he played the electric bass and because he was able to develop a sound on the electric bass that was revolutionary, it's impossible to reproduce that sound on the acoustic bass, because the acoustic bass has a much shorter envelope. Jaco was able to take the sustain that comes from an electric instrument and the singing quality of the fretless electric bass and develop a sound that was revolutionary, you know, and he used it to exploit melody and harmony like no one else had ever done prior to him. You know, but taking all those early influences and applying it to this modern instrument. So he really, Jaco, and basically he defined what the electric bass can do. And I don't think anybody has, there have been a lot of great players come, we're all influenced by Jaco, but I don't think anybody's really surpassed that innovative accomplishment that he did. You know.
So, have you ever heard Julius, Jaco's song?
Yes, I have, as a matter of fact. Yeah, and he sounds great. He looks exactly like Jaco. It's amazing how much he resembles his father, and he is very gifted. You know. I met him years ago, and I guess he still lives in Florida. And I don't know if he's pursuing a career in music now or not. I haven't heard anything from him. I heard him play, and he, it's interesting, he had actually learned all of his father's solos and songs from the recordings. And he was very young when Jaco died, so I don't think he really had much of a relationship with his father prior to Jaco's death. But he went and sat down with the records and got all this stuff together. And the world is waiting for Julius now, I guess. I don't know if he's ever going to emerge as an important player like his father was. But it must be difficult for him to try to be a bass player and to try to live in the shadow of his father, because it would be like being the son of Miles Davis or Herbie Hancock or somebody. You know, I mean, Jaco was that important. So it's. I wouldn't want to be in his shoes, but he's very talented, and I hope that he finds his own voice and finds his own place with a career in music, if that's what he wants. I think it may be what he wants.
Moi j'ai une petite question. Dans la formation de ce soir, il a un rôle de musicien harmonique alors que son instrument devrait être un peu plus accompagnant. Est-ce que c'est pour ça d'abord qu'il choisit une six cordes, et est-ce que c'est une jolie place à l'instrument que de faire des formations sans instrument harmonique?
Donc, so tonight
Mm-hmm.
and tonight, Steve, you were doublé, il était harmonique, c'est ça?
Il est le seul instrument harmonique.
Okay, so tonight you were the only harmonic instrument, and so, you know.
Et la basse n'est pas un
So,
instrument
and
harmonique.
bass is not an harmonic instrument, so, you know.
Well, it comes from Jaco. It comes from Jaco. I mean, I wouldn't be approaching the bass this way. The thing that I'm trying to develop now is utilizing the harmonic capabilities of the bass, and Jaco was the one who opened the door for that. And he did it on a 4-string bass, you know, so I have a little bit of an advantage because I have a little extra higher range with the 6-string bass. So that was part of the inspiration for Jaco, from Jaco to me, to try to develop that kind of approach to playing the bass. But it's a little bit of a misconception, because I'm not the only harmonic instrument in this particular trio, the Lounge Art Ensemble, because Peter's playing harmony too, and Bob Shepard's playing harmony. And I don't know if there were a couple times when Bob was using harmonics on the saxophone and playing kind of some chords of his own, and that's kind of the whole idea behind this group, is to approach it from a minimalistic concept and see how far we can exploit the capabilities of each instrument. You know, when Peter plays, the way he tunes the drums and his touch on the drums, Peter produces chords and overtones too. You know, if you listen carefully, and if the acoustic environment is good enough to expose that, you can hear that we're all thinking harmonically, but because I play a string instrument, I'm able to maybe, you know, demonstrate that a little more clearly than the other guys, because I can play notes simultaneously, and they have to operate from a purely monophonic standpoint, you know.